Hey everybody, welcome to Agency Zoom's Agency of the Month. Really excited to have Christian Moore joining us. He has had his agency for 3 years now. And what we're excited to feature and focus on in this segment of Agency of the Month is celebrating the 3-year anniversary. Christian, do you want to share with everybody a little bit around your founding, how you got involved in the independent agency space, how you decided to start and even launch your agency, whether it's from like a cultural standpoint or whether it was servicing your customers and something you saw that stuck out, that was really that moment that it dawned on you that having your own thing was going to be the answer to it?
Yeah, and I think I'd like to at the end kind of so stick around because I'd like to really I think say what I've learned over the last 3 years of how I would do things differently, thinking in terms of for this group for this conversation, what would be the most helpful to people, and I think that especially if there are new agencies out there, agencies who are trying to maybe emulate some of the things that we're doing, I think that being able to hear the how we started and why it will be inspirational, but I also think that kind of hearing some of our mistakes is, and also, whenever people kind of get attention, they also like to see people fail. So I'll tell you how we failed, and maybe you just can kind of replace this for your daytime TV. So basically, I was with I started out in the captive side of things. I was a State Farm agent. Ended up getting recruited into the commercial or into the independent side by a large independent agency in Kentucky, one of the larger ones. Spent a few years there as one of their top sales reps for new business. There are some guys there that had some pretty big books. So I don't know if it'd be fair to say that I was their top producing agent. Is If you have a $17 million book and you grow by 5%, that's it's not bad, right? But we got going, and it was they were owned by AAA. And a lot of people don't know this, but AAA is a conglomerating organization. There's a lot of franchises, and basically right now at the top, they're just continuing to buy and buy and buy. And so basically my paycheck started going further and further away from my company. And I'm not a college educated guy, and they're a very corporate company. And I kind of looked up one day and I was thinking, man, what would happen if one of these guys just decided, well, this Yahoo with no college degree is making more money than our executive vice presidents, and they're just going to yank my paycheck. So that kind of scared me, and especially because there some decisions like that had kind of been made, where it showed me that we were probably more of a number to the larger organization than I was to the actual agency that I worked at, which really still kind of operated like a small family-based business, which is how they began.
Yeah.
Well, the big kicker for me was that it became harder and harder to support our community. And I feel called to be in my community. I feel not just, I think well, the cool thing about the insurance industry is we're the most generous, I think, industry, bar none. Most insurance agents love the people in their communities.
Mhm.
Most insurance agents love their communities sincerely, not just like we make money off them, but sincerely love their communities and want to invest in those. Well, that was the same for me. But I wanted to create an organization, not just that did it, that happened to do it, but that was created to do it. Um, and what I will usually tell people is most insurance agencies give, but most insurance agencies aren't created to give. There are plenty of agencies that actually give far more than we do because we're a young agency, but they happen to give. We exist to. And because of that, our brand narrative is better. So it kind of gets into the why. Why do you exist? And a lot of agencies don't have that answer. It's really hard for these guys who came in and either or ladies who came in and bought an agency or took one over or merged with others. And that answer, the question of why, is something that they never really addressed. It's just that they do, but they've never really understood their own why do they exist. And so ours is we exist to make a generational impact in our community. We want to do that through giving and inspiring others to give. So even if we give less, the fact that we exist for that purpose gives us more power behind the reason that we do those things. So, and that's not meant to be braggadocious. It's just meant to say that agencies out there, if they're listening to this, should actually be focused on why they exist. So I had this great model planned out from leaving that large organization because frankly, they actually were very generous with their employees. They treated me very well. and they treat their people well. So if you guys are listening to this, I don't hate you. I love you. Thank you. And honestly, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the things I learned at that larger organization. And the way that I decided to structure my company is I actually met a couple of guys who are willing to invest. And actually, so I always say that we were not a scratch agency, we were a startup agency, and there's a difference. And they ended up giving me the ability to have access to capital, and I could hire, really good salespeople. And so we kind of realized that we were going to offer a salary that was going to diminish over time and give them commission. Well, in order to kind of, and I had a very aggressive sales goal. So we built up this really, fairly significantly sized book of business in a very short period of time. But we did it because we hired a bunch of salespeople and we had no book of business to service. So we're just like, hey, what we're going to do is we're just going to sell and service our own stuff till we get to a certain point, and then we'll bring service people in. Well, the thing about salespeople is they're not great service people. That's a shocker, right?
Big surprise. Huge surprise.
Right. So we got so top heavy that we couldn't afford to bring people in to service our clients the way that we expect to service them. And the sales staff, we were doing such a good job at generating leads and bringing them in organically and through other avenues, through partnerships, that the salespeople couldn't really take their foot off the gas because there was so much coming in, right? What I now know, if I were going to do things differently, I would not have started in the same way. I would have, and not because of the people in particular, but because we weren't balanced to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And most agencies have a hard time recruiting salespeople. It's actually, I would say it's probably at the top of most agencies' list as far as they don't know how to do that. Well, that wasn't our problem. Our problem was that we recruited too many salespeople. And then even more than that, we didn't have I knew how I wanted the culture to exist, but I had come from such corporate overlords that I wanted to provide freedom and generosity, and I wanted to invest in all of these people. Well, what I really learned was that there's no flexibility without structure, and I was not, or I spent too much time, being a cheerleader, and for fear of losing these great salespeople, as opposed to setting early, strong standards against them so that they knew this is how to do things. Well, when you fast forward 2 years and you've been giving people, a really long leash to make their own mistakes and kind of do things their own way, and then you come and say, hey, guess what? We are going to start applying traction, and everything that I've been asking you to do that you say yes, then don't do, I'm actually going to pay attention to it now, and we're going to track it. And if you don't do it, I'm going to fire you. Well, it wouldn't be a shocker to learn that once I did that, a few people left the agency. They
Right.
did not want to be known for that. On the flip side of it, it also caused problems in the relational side of things, because I'm not saying that was to everyone. That could have just applied to, one person or two people. And again, that's even speculation. But it seems like that was a motivating factor. But the other was, well, what's changed, Christian? Why do you care about this now? You never tracked those things before, and now you're tracking those things. Well, one was, because people weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, but it really comes back to me, not them. It's not on them. It's on the owner, it's on the leader of the organization. And frankly, I wanted to be too much of a friend, and I didn't want to lead in a way that would cause that friction. And I'm actually a person who likes confrontation. So I
No.
can't imagine how most insurance agents are not. Most insurance agents are usually people pleasing. And so I had to actually come to terms with the fact that I was maybe a little more of a people pleaser than maybe I realized.
Mm-hmm.
I think if anything, it probably dealt a little bit more with pride. Like, I brought these people on. If I lose them, what would that say? What would that look like? Instead of saying, what is best for our clients? And let's make every decision around that. And when you read the books about, about Bezos or about Zappos or about, any great organization has great customer service. What they say at Amazon is that they are client obsessed. And I think that what we have to do as insurance agents is we have to say that what has to matter more than anything is to give the greatest client experience possible and not compare ourselves to insurance agencies. We I gave a talk a little while ago, and and this was kind of as all of this was kind of coming around. You always say that you preach the sermon, you need to hear the best, right? What I came to understand or really see is that every one of our clients deals with Amazon, right? Like almost every one of them. Who doesn't order from Amazon?
Right.
Every one of our clients gets to go to a Nordstrom's, gets to eat at Chick-fil-A. And there are all of these stories about how those companies go above and beyond to take care of their clients. They just got off the phone with Amazon customer service, and then they called your agency.
Yeah, scary.
Was there a drop off?
Right.
When they called my agency, did one of my team members answer the phone one way one time and then another do it a different way? Did one respond quickly and another say yes and then never do anything? That should really scare us as an industry, because it's real easy to compare ourselves to the State Farm office or the Allstate office or the farmer's office or the local independent agency down the road and say, we got those guys beat. And to a certain degree, that's fine. But if you want to exist in 10 years, you have to compare yourselves to the standards of all marketplace, not just the insurance marketplace. And I think that's where we fail as an industry right now, because we just compare ourselves to insurance. As travelers, I hope you're hearing this, you still fax us stuff. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Biggest problem.
Make this go viral. Travelers, you should be ashamed of yourself. You're faxing my agency things. Great, you can fax it to my email. Guess what? You can email me. Just email. Why do you fax? Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Side tangent, right?
Yeah, drives me crazy. But that's the industry, and that's one of the largest insurers in the country, and they use faxing in 2021.
Yeah.
What? Anyway, sorry. So to go back to the service side, though, are we still trying to? There are agencies that still, fax their clients things, and still send, and still accept paper payment. And in rural cities, that makes sense, but to some degree. But we have to get into the fact that we're going to train our clients, and we have to know who we're going after. And that kind of gets into what you were talking about before we started this, about marketing and branding. Because if we don't know why our clients, if we were not intentionally marketing to a very specific type of client, a husband and wife between the ages of 37 and 44, married with 2 children between the ages of 5 and 10, who are a local member of their church and play soccer and basketball and ballet and make between $120,000 and $180,000 in their household. If they came to us and we don't know why, then we have huge problems, because we didn't market to them. And if we didn't market to them and they bought from us, and we don't know why, how are we going to keep them? How are we going to find others like them? If we're not intentional with those things, we're just, every agent says, oh yeah, I'm my brand, I'm marketing. And it's just on accident. They're not intentionally doing these things. What I've realized is that I was intentionally doing some good things, and I was intentionally avoiding other good things. And it created a lopsided agency where we were really good at getting business and we were bad at keeping it. But it wasn't that bad, it was still like industry standard good. But then COVID hit. And that's when we have problems, because okay, yeah, I was comparing myself against insurance agencies, right? But then COVID hit, and all of that business that we weren't doing a good job making sticky went out the back end.
Right.
We wrote, and I'll just say this out loud. We wrote $2.7 million of new business in 2020, and we lost a million.
Right.
So we only grew by 1.7 million. Now, I think a lot of agencies out there would be like, sign me up for that. But we lost, I don't know, 150,000 in revenue plus
Right.
contingencies.
Right. Do you
That's
feel like
that's unacceptable.
a lot of this dawned on you too because of your initial goal of giving back to your community? Like, does it feel like not like coming in at 1.7 at the end of the year? Like you said, most agencies would, sell their child for that. Goodbye perpetuation plan. Hello, 1.7 in new sales.
Right.
When you consider that, do you feel like the upside feels worse for you guys as a team because the other upside, like why you started your agency, was to actively give back to your community, and you guys did hone in on the 1 million that didn't stick? Do you feel like that's what drew your attention to it, or do you feel like there were other things ahead of time that were beginning to make you guys aware of it being problematic, or even just, I don't want to say morally frustrating because obviously it's not that bad, but something that, was kind of internally eating at you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that um, it's one thing to want to be generous. It's another thing to be disciplined and to be a good steward of things. And I think that a more conservative, so there's an agent here in our town who uses you guys as well. And he started his agency a year or two before mine, and it's about half my agency size now. He has 2 employees and is incredibly profitable and has a high retention ratio. And he started with just himself and like nothing except some good relationships. He's a great agent, of course. If I had done things the way that he did things, I would be able to give 3 to 5 times more than we can now, because I would have provided a firm foundation to give from. But when you give from a place of debt, does it get accounted to you, or does it get accounted to your credit card?
Right.
Right. So is Real Good Group being generous, or is Visa?
Right.
Right. And that goes for everyone in personal life too. People want to give to other people. They go to these like GoFundMe accounts and they're like, well, I really want to take care of this person. I'll just put it on my Visa card. Right. But and then they feel good about themselves. But the reality is that they did not give. Visa gave, or MasterCard or American Express gave, and that person went into more debt. The more responsible thing to do is to make the hard decisions, the hard choices now. Get yourself in a good place so that you can, I'm a Dave Ramsey ELP. Dave Ramsey says, live like no one else lives now so that you can live like no one else later. Be disciplined and make sacrifices now so that you can live like no one else later. So we lost a few team members recently, and it was because of some of this turmoil. But the thing that was a blessing in that was that it allowed us to revamp, and it allowed us to make the changes that we needed to make. And now we did not lose a single step in sales when we lost our team members, but we gained traction on our retention. And what we had found is that there were people that were just not doing their jobs, they were just only doing some of it, and they were letting it off, and it was because they hadn't bought in. But the reality is that it was because the leader of the organization didn't set the disciplined expectations of what needed to happen. That all comes back on me. And so it was a hard lesson to learn, but I'm really thankful for it, because now our team moving forward, one, is a really strong team together, but I also know how to set these expectations and to be a better steward moving forward so that we can, hit that why of why we exist and what we want to do in our community.
Right. I think there's a level of stewardship too that you talked about that a lot of agencies are going to go through as they continue to grow, as a let's say, responsibly add staff, anything of the sort, is that you also become a steward to the team, the family that you're creating at your agency. And if you're overextending your agency or even yourself personally, you're quickly putting them in jeopardy in some regard as well. And I think that's a call out, the fact that you guys have had some people that have moved on, and then the people that you have had stay have said, no, I trust the owner of my agency, I trust my agency, and I am like heads down committed to this family. I think it speaks really highly of you and the rest of the team that you guys do have there still, and the fact that, you know, there's a lot of good to come still to the agency.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that's the cool thing, is because even the people that were gone, I can look back and say, man, I was as generous as I possibly could have been with those people, and we loved them and still do. And that's a really cool thing, because in business you don't get to talk about love a lot, and we really do try and act from that place. Um, as we, one of my partners said that, hey, um, they spend a lot of their time giving and figuring out how to give. And he's like, man, if I'm going to be spending all this time and money giving, I might as well give as much as I possibly can to my team who makes it possible. And I thought that was really profound and good, that, a lot of people like get to that profit, they're trying to like grow that profit, but then they give it outside of their business. Well, doesn't it make sense to figure out how to be as generous as possible here first before giving it outside?
Right.
That's another thought, but that all comes back to stewardship, I think. And so, and being willing to be disciplined and make those hard choices. And when you love people and you invest in people like you're talking about, I mean, sometimes the hard choice is a disaster, and it hurts just as, and it's just a lose-lose. You just get into, it's a Kobayashi Maru for any Star Trek nerds out there, and you got to make a choice that's going to hurt someone. Um,
Right.
so when I do that, I try and make a choice that hurts me the most.
Right. Yeah, as a steward, you kind of have to take on the hardest choices. You take the brunt of the hardest outcomes too.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. But then, but we're still in this industry, and we get to talk to people every day. And if we're doing things for the right reasons, then we're getting to what's really cool. We talk about generosity, but when you're an open-handed salesperson, when you're not just always closing hard, and you're advising people and giving them good advice like most insurance agents are. One thing that's really cool is that the word generous has a synonym, and the synonym is open-handed. So when you are selling in an open-handed manner, you're actually participating in a form of generosity. And that's a really empowering thing in the middle of the sales process, because by being open-handed, then you actually are participating in generosity. And that should inspire other people to be generous, and hopefully inspires people to make those actions. It's actually, here's the plug for Agency Zoom. It's why I came back to Agency Zoom. And it was because you and Mo and Tolga, you guys were willing to let me go. And when I came, but if I had problems or questions, or if I had challenges, you guys always responded in an open-handed way. And it wasn't, we're trying to convince you that we're right. It was first seeking to understand, and then giving advice that I could use anywhere, not just with Agency Zoom. And that matched our culture. And so here we are,
Now
rocking and rolling
you're
with Agency Zoom.
again.
That's right.
Now you're agency of the month again. What a problem, right?
Crazy, crazy. And I couldn't, and in Agency of the Month, that's very humbling. My team is phenomenal. We have 4 producers, and I'm looking at our number right now. Agency Zoom is right up. You can't see my screen. It's right there. And we just hit 224,000 for the month. That's crazy.
FYI to everybody, we're recording this on a Friday afternoon, and Christian's numbers are still rolling in because his team's still there working alongside him.
On a Friday at the end of the month, we hit 32,725 in sales. That's not bad.
Not bad at all. I'll trade you. We do pretty well, and we don't hit that, so I would trade you.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. But it's because I honestly have team members, I have to tell them that if they don't take a vacation, I'm going to make them. And if they go on vacation, I'm going to turn their email off so they won't work. But honestly, they would be mad at me, so I can't do that.
It's part of being a steward, right? I think that call out, that stewardship is really the first step towards generosity, because you're taking care of yourself, you're taking care of the people around you, you're taking care of your business. So then you can go forth and be generous is a really awesome thing to leave people with. The only other thing I want to ask you, because I know you probably have spent time working with your team on it, how do you encourage a salesperson to migrate that behavior? Is it intrinsic? Is it just built into them to begin with? Or is it something you could actually coach and intentionally build a culture around to get them to be more open-handed rather than the really aggressive sales mentality?
Kind of like, I think it's like with children, it's like it has to be modeled first. Um, and so, and everything, everything rolls downhill, right?
Mhm.
I think that I remember networking with other agency owners when I first got going, and one of my team members was like actually mad at me. He's like, "Why are you sharing our secret sauce? Why are you telling them how we're doing things? These are our competitors." But then all of this, I mean, I received so much help from other agents from across the country. And I mean, probably I tried to calculate it one time. It was over $100,000 in services and help that I didn't pay for just from the generosity of other agents. And then one day that team member came in and went, "Oh man, now I get it." Yeah, that really happened. I'm not just making that up. He really was like, "Dude, I get it. That makes sense." And it was because he got to see investing and giving. But I also think it goes to knowing different personality types. I don't think a salesperson who's a really, really good salesperson is really ever going to be naturally a good steward. I mean, I'm sure they are out there, but I think that that personality that is the gregarious, ready to go out and talk to anybody and take care of anything, and you know, a problem's never a problem. I can handle it. Well, they probably treat their own problems that way, and and
Not a great
probably made bad
steward.
decisions. But on the flip side, the service rep in the office who loves people and is, their tendency is to sell from their own pocket, that person doesn't have boundaries. And so they will just, put themselves in your circle and give and give and give and give. And so kind of like to your concept of this of stewardship, if you don't have boundaries, then you can't give from a place and
Right.
you'll just deplete yourself. So it's really a question of how that modifies based off of each person's personality. And I think that everyone does these personality tests because they think it's sexy and they think it's going to help them find the next best salesperson. But it should have a lot more to do with your why. And again, if you're doing personality tests because you're trying to find a salesperson, but you're not judging that against, the culture, then you're just finding people who fit one personality mold. But how are you going to tell that person to, hey, you need to have boundaries in your life? Or, hey, you
Right.
know what, if you apply some discipline to your sales process, or this is, or hey, we're going to put these external things on you. I had one team member, she was flailing, and I just said, hey, look, this isn't how we do things in the agency, but you're making a lot of bad decisions because of your personal life, and it's wrecking your ability to. And she's the hardest worker in the world, but she was just all over the place. I said, look, I'm going to make it so that you can't say yes to everyone in your world, and you're just going to have to either do this or lose your job, and that's what you're going to have to tell people. And so you have to come in at a certain time. You can only take an hour lunch, and if you have to run errands, do it during that hour, and then you have to leave at this time. And she said, thank you. And it was because she was the type of person who would just kill herself for everyone else and
Right.
sacrifice what mattered to her. Well, that happened to be her job. And so by saying, hey, you're not allowed to do that anymore, it was actually peaceful for her.
Right.
But to another team member, that would have felt like hell.
Hmm. I think that's a good call out, that it's going to be unique to each person, but there probably still is something at the core of most people that we should identify, and maybe it aligns with our culture and maybe it doesn't, and we shouldn't step away from that, but step in front of it, confront it, work with them on it, and that no two people are going to be perfectly the same. You may end up with
Right.
some close replicas, but probably not identical.
Right. Exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Love it. Well, congrats again. Thank you guys so much, and love having you as a customer and having Christian, you're the first agency of the month that's also on the Agency Advisory Council, so that's kind of fun. Well,
Yeah, that is. I feel like, I mean, that was my payment, right? You're like, you can be agency of the month if you get on the council. That
yeah,
was what you
yeah.
guys
If you like
promised.
pour out all ideas at all times, yeah, that's the
Yeah, you
trade-off.
guys were like, just stop putting on Facebook, please. Just put me on the council. We'll put you on the council so you can shut up. No, it was an honor. Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. Thank you.
See ya.